This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to the 28th Tehillim celebration. We are a group that says Tehillim, one parak a day, in gratitude to Hashem for all the blessings He gives us. And we are of the mindset that why should we wait till we're sick or needing something? Let's just say thank you to Hashem so He doesn't have to remind us to say thank you to Him. So we're trying to be proactive and just say our Tehillim out of love for Hashem and thank Him for our blessings every day. We try to think of 5 things we're thankful for every day. It's very easy to come up with 5 new things every day. And it doesn't hurt to repeat some of them either. Okay, so every time we finish 150 parakim of Tehillim, we like to have a celebration. Since the men have a siyum when they're done with learning Gemara, they have a siyum, they celebrate. So we like to celebrate when we're done saying our book of Tehillim. And we are a group that's a no pressure group. You say 5 Tehillim, 10 Tehillim, all 150, whatever you want to do. You have enough pressures in your life. So we just say what you can when you can. If you want to be on our email list, go to our website, Daily Gratitude Tehillim.com, and sign up. Okay. Rabbi Shafier, sometimes known as the Shmuz, has graciously agreed to give us a talk today on his latest book, which is, it's such a long title, and I keep messing it up, but and I don't have it in front of me. So I'm going to let the rep, there we go. The 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make. I actually have it on my bookshelf over there. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the Shmuz, Rabbi Shafier. He is the founder of Tiferes B'nai Torah, yeshiva program for working people, and the shmuz.com. And I have to tell you, when I started being a matchmaker and I was looking for things to educate myself on helping singles, I came across the shmuz.com and I found so much helpful information on relationships and especially dating. Rabbi Shafier was a high school Rebbe for more than 15 years when the Rosh Yeshiva of Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Henoch Leibowitz Zatzal, requested that he undertake a very special project and create an engaging learning program for working people. Following the Rav's instructions, Rabbi Shafier founded TBT and the Shmuz.com in 2003, and the impact of TBT and the Shmuz was felt immediately. Besides the thousands of the members of Shmuz.com, the Shmuz app, and the Shmuz podcast, the Shmuz, SHMUZ, in case you're looking for it online, is broadcast on Aish, Torah Anytime, Israel National Radio, and syndicated in more than 15 papers. Each Shmuz is heard by over 10,000 people throughout the world, from Yerushalayim to Sydney, from South Africa to South America. The Shmuz is now bringing Torah and Hashkafa to Jews everywhere. There are over 285 Shmuzin and 7 books in the various Shmuz series. Rabbi Shafier's biggest claim to fame is that he's a father of 6 children, grandfather of 8, lives in Monsey, New York, and people across the globe seek his advice on work, family, and personal issues. Rabbi Shafier, I'm going to introduce you now. You need to come off mute. And let me ask you why you agreed to speak to us today. What's our goal?
Why did I agree? Because you asked me. That's an unfair question.
What's our goal of today?
What's our goal or my goal?
Your goal. We'll do your goal.
I'll say when I start, and then you'll tell me if I did a good job in the end, if I accomplished my goal. Okay, let me begin. Actually, if I could ask everyone to please put themselves on mute, or whoever's monitoring. Ben, if you're monitoring this, mute, that'd be really great. Just mute everybody except me, and then we'll open for questions. Okay, so first of all, thank you for inviting me. I have dealt with hundreds and hundreds of couples over the past 20 years, and on a regular basis, I would have a couple in front of me, and he would say something, she would say something, my jaw would drop, because invariably, there was no way in the world that they could possibly recognize the damage that they were dealing to each other, to their relationship. And when I began seeing the pattern, the same sort of things again and again, I realized that there were certain commonalities and certain patterns happening. And this book, The 10 Really Dumb Mistakes That Very Smart Couples Make, I wrote because I found many, many people making the same sort of mistakes. Now, today's group really is going to deal partly with marriage, but really more of the getting into the marriage state. And before we really deal with the mistakes in marriage, I like to focus on something that often people who are not yet married misunderstand. And let me begin this part with two questions. If I were to ask the following, take a couple, whether they're married 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, ask them the following question. The person that you're married to today, is that the same person that you were dating originally? I have found over and over the answer is no, absolutely not. Now, the marriage could be great, good, indifferent, doesn't matter. And invariably, the answer is the person that I'm married to is vastly different than the person that I was dating. Okay, that's question number one. Question number two that I like to ask people when they're married 2 years, 20 years or more is the following. We all have our laundry list of things. I need, I want, I should have. Some are negotiable, some aren't. But if I were to ask you 2 years or 20 years after you're married, those things that you thought were so important, and especially that list of things that were non-negotiables, do they really matter now? Again, I found the answer to that question is invariably absolutely not. There were 6 other things that I thought was so much more important and that I didn't have on the list, but those things that I thought was so important weren't. Now, the reason why that is, I believe, a very important perspective for people before they're married is because when you begin to understand marriage is a complex weave of personalities, the relationship, and knowing how to be successfully married. And invariably, people have certain understandings of what they need before they're married, and rare it is that they have any connection to what's real, to what they need. And again, because I deal with people at different ages and different stages, on a regular basis, I've dealt with people who are ready to give it up. And they'll be going out, things are going really well, but there's a certain blockage. I can't take somebody X, Y, and Z. And so many times I say to myself, if this person only were married, and they'd recognize that that which they think is so important isn't, and that which really is important, they're not even hitting on. So I believe that this topic that we're going to speak about today, which is the topic of marriage, is very, very important. A, because it'll help you understand marriage. B, especially if you're not married yet, it'll give you a better appreciation of what it is that you actually need. Okay, so Mrs. Young, that's my goal. Did I do a good job on the goal? That's a yes, good, you're still on mute. Okay, good. Okay, so let's begin. All right. Parsha Vayera opens up with Avram Avinu opening his eyes, looking out on the horizon, and he sees these 3 wayfarers, 3 Arabs. He doesn't know who they are. To his mind, they're just people passing. He runs out full speed, bows down in front of them and says, Al na tavro min Adoni, please do not pass from your master. He welcomes them in. He prepares a lavish meal. He prepares water, gives them to drink, stands over them like a waiter. And as he's standing over these 3 people, again, in his mind, just wayfarers, just travelers, at one of the point, these malachim, these angels, and one of them says to Avram, Ayeh Sarah Ishtecha, where is Sarah, your wife? Avram responds, Hinehi ba'oel, she's in the tent. Rashi points out that these were Malachei Asharis, not simple angels, the highest level of angels. Yodim Hayu, says Rashi, they knew exactly where Sarah was. Why then did they ask the question? Because they knew if they'd ask where is Sarah, Avram would answer, Hinehi ba'oel, she's in the tent. She's a tznuah, she's a modest woman. When he would say those words, he would have a greater appreciation of one of her fine qualities, her modesty. And by saying those words, he would have a great appreciation of her, to make her more beloved in his eyes. They asked the question, so he should answer. Now, I'd like to ask you what I consider the obvious question on this Rashi. What is the biggest obstacle to a successful marriage? So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that marriage is about giving, a marriage about being other-centered, and the single biggest obstacle to a successful marriage is when you're completely self-centered. When the world ends and begins in my Dalet Amas, in my 4 cubics, I am a difficult person to be married to. Here's the problem with this Rashi. And we're dealing with 2 of the most other-centered human beings you could ever imagine. Avram Avinu, the paradigm of chesed. Sari Menu, his parallel to completely giving, loving people. Why did the Malachim feel they had to ask this question to make her more beloved in his eyes? They had the near perfect marriage. As a matter of fact, the Maharal says in the course of history, there was never a bond between husband and wife as there was between Avram Avinu and Sarah Imenu. And the question I'd like to ask is, why did the Malachim have to ask this question, where is Sarah, to make her more beloved in his eyes, when it sounds inappropriate? It doesn't sound very respectful. Why are you asking a man about his wife? He offers you drink, offers you beverage, and you start asking about his wife. It doesn't sound very polite. But if that question doesn't trouble you, let's follow the storyline a little bit and let's see if we understand things a little bit better. A moment or two later, one of these Malachim say that next year, this time, your wife will have a son. At that point, Avram Avinu realized they weren't just simple people, and they were Malachim, but Sarah Imenu didn't. She's on the other side of the tent. She overhears this conversation. She overhears one of these gentlemen saying, next year, this time, your wife will have a child. But Tistak Sarah Bekirba, Sarah laughs inside to herself, saying, how could it be? How could I have a child? And Adoni Zokain, my husband, is too old. A few moments later, Hashem appears to Avram with a complaint. Lama Sachaka Sarah, why did Sarah laugh, saying that she's too old? Now Rashi points out that's not what Sarah said. Sarah laughs, saying, how could I have a child when my husband is so old? Yet when Hashem repeated it, Hashem changed it and said, why did Sarah laugh, saying that she is too old? And Rashi observes, why did Hashem change? Mibnei Shalom, because of peace. Halacha is you're allowed to lie for peace. Hashem didn't want Avram to hear that Sarah said that he is too old to have children. So Hashem changed it around and said, Sarah said that she is too old. I heard my Rebbe, the Shiva Zatzal, Rabbi Leibowitz, ask a question on this Rashi. When do we say you could lie for peace? If there's going to be a major fight, let's say there's going to be a major quibble, there's going to be a major issue, and the halacha is that you're allowed to lie for peace. But let's imagine for a minute that Avram heard that Sarah said that he's too old to have children. Do you think he would have gone to pieces? Do you think he would have had Sarah called me an old man? He was a man at the prime of his greatness. And he was a man, one of the wealthiest, most powerful people alive. He had another 75 years to live, by the way. He lived to 175, he's now only 99. What would have happened had Avram Avinu heard that Sarah said he's too old? He wouldn't have gone to pieces, he wouldn't have gotten angry, he wouldn't have screamed. Why then did Hashem have to change? So these two questions I'd like to see if we could address. Number one, why did the Malachim have to ask this question, where is Sarah? Almost overstepping the bounds, maybe asking a question that's not so appropriate to make her more beloved. And number two, why then did Hashem have to lie so that Avram shouldn't hear that Sarah said that he's too old to have children? Okay, now to answer these two questions, I'd like to share with you a very significant question. And that question is, today, in the United States of America, what is the largest cause of divorce? If I were to ask you, what is the biggest cause of divorce today? Now, people would probably say all kinds of answers. Everyone here is on mute, so you're not going to respond. But people would say something like, oh, children or money, maybe in-laws, religion. And well, I'd like to share with you that those are all issues, and they're very important issues. None of those are the leading cause of divorce today. The one single leading cause of divorce today is fighting. Fighting. You have a rabbi fighting about the kids, the religion, the money, their in-laws, right? No, not true at all. It's never about the issues. It's always about the relationship. And if the marriage is solid, if there's respect and love in the marriage, my way, your way, we find a way, it's never the issues, it's always the relationship. And I'll show you what I mean. Studies show that 70% of successful marriages have at least one irreconcilable difference. An irreconcilable difference means a difference that can't be reconciled. For instance, he has a successful business in Manhattan. She has severe allergies and needs to live in San Diego. Chicago doesn't cut it for either one. He wants to bring the kids up in a Litvish way, and she wants more of a Hasidic upbringing. You can't send the kids to yeshiva with long curly payas on one side. An irreconcilable difference means a difference that has no reconciliation. 70% of successful marriages have at least one, if not more, major irreconcilable difference. So how do they continue? How are they successful? And the answer is, as long as there's love, as long as there's respect, my way, your way. We find a way because we're in this together. But in the minute that the love and the respect starts to wane, then forget about it. Things in a very, very different state of being. John Gottman, who's a marriage researcher, can determine with 94% accuracy whether a couple will divorce shortly or not. And it's interesting because he explains his system. He brings a couple into his lab. He puts them into chairs facing each other, and he measures everything. He measures respiration, he measures heart rate, he videotapes it, and he asks them to speak about 3 topics. One is a mutually pleasing topic, and the other is a neutral topic, and the third topic is what he calls a flashpoint, something that they typically argue about. And he measures everything, but he explains that he's looking for one particular sign: contempt. Now, contempt isn't hatred, it's not anger, it's sort of the rolling of the eyes. He explains that if he sees one sign of contempt without 5 positive signs opposite that, that marriage is headed for deep trouble. And why is that? Because the heart blood of a successful marriage is the love in the marriage. You see, Hollywood got it 100% right, but backwards. You see, in the world of Hollywood, we fall in love, we get married. We fall out of love, we get unmarried. Love comes, love goes. We don't know why, but that's the way it is. From a Torah perspective, we don't get married for love. I marry this person because I believe that this is the person that Hashem has determined is the right one for me. But that's the determination factor. And once you're married, if there isn't a powerful bond of love and respect in your marriage, and if you're not constantly fostering it, and you're not constantly building that up, and then in a very short time, you're going to be distant, you're going to be in different parts of the world, fight you will about small things, about little things, about everything, because there's always what to fight about. Because the glue of the marriage is the love. And this is the first of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make. They stopped working on the love in the marriage. They were great during the courting stage. They're great during the first 6 months of marriage. But they each got busy, went into their own worlds, and they stopped working on the bond of love, the connection. And if the bond of love in your marriage starts to wane, in a very short time, you're going to be very distant, and things are going to be very, very apart. And I believe that's exactly the answer to this Rashi. Do you know why the Malachim asked that question of Avram? Because Avram gave them food, gave them beverage. Granted, they didn't need it. You gave us something we want to give back. They wanted to increase the love in the marriage. As much as Avram and Sarah had the near perfect marriage, 99% perfect, and there was more that could be added, but this is the point. The glue of the marriage is the love. They wanted to make Avram appreciate who Sarah was to a greater extent. They wanted to make her more beloved in his eyes. Why? Because the essence of a successful marriage is the love. And I believe that's why, my Rebbe explained, that's why Hashem changed. That's why Hashem changed the story. When Sarah said that Avram's too old, Hashem said, no. Sarah said she's too old, because had Avram heard the words that Sarah said that he's too old, he wouldn't have gone to pieces. He wouldn't have gotten angry. He would have made a slight scratch, maybe imperceptible. But Hashem says it's worthy for me to change the truth to prevent even the slightest mar in a near perfect marriage. And my friends, there are 2 lessons here. Number 1, Shalom Bayis is holy. The peace in the marriage is the success of the marriage. And number 1, Shalom Bayis is holy. It's worthy of Hashem to change. And number 2, the glue of the marriage is the love. And this is the first of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make, not working on the love, not working on the bond, not working on the connection. Okay, but I said I'm going to share some of the ideas of marriage, not just the first. Let's continue, and let's see if we get a few more of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make, and let's see if we can learn from that. It is my firm belief that some point after the marriage, maybe 6 months, maybe a year after the marriage, either he or she wake up one morning and they say these words: oh my goodness, oh my gosh, I made the biggest mistake in my life. I married the wrong one. And it's true that they're making a mistake, but not the mistake that they think they're making. You see, when a couple first meet and they go through the initial courtship stage, there's something called infatuation. Infatuation is he looks in her eyes, she looks in her eyes, the violins start playing, and before you know it, love is in the air. It's not love, it's infatuation. And you could almost measure the changes. It's like a pill goes off in his chest and whoosh, suddenly everything is wonderful, everything is great. As a matter of fact, they study now the neurotransmitters, the dopamine, the serotonin level in the brain. And they say when you study a couple in that state of infatuation, the change in the neurotransmitters is comparable to cocaine use. The couple is high. And in that state of high, he's perfect, she's perfect, and everyone's going to live happily ever after. Now, I got a chance to see this quite a number of years ago when we were first engaged, my wife and I. Baruch Hashem, we're married now 36 years, thank God. But it was a couple of years ago when we were first engaged. And I got to hear my then Kala on the phone with one of our friends. And the conversation sounded something like this. Listen, I know no one's perfect. I know it can't be, but I'm telling you, he's perfect. Now, I, overhearing this conversation, said to myself, I'm not going to be the one to share this with her, but I believe that she's in for a rude awakening. Now, why does the Kala feel the chassan is perfect? And why does the chassan feel the Kala is perfect? Because the serotonin, the dopamine, and the neurotransmitters go off. There's that state of high, that state of infatuation, and that feeling feels like it'll last forever. And this is the second of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make. Infatuation has a shelf life. Infatuation is a drug that Hashem created for a particular reason. And you take two people from vastly different backgrounds, with different temperaments, different ways of doing things, and ask them to live together in peace and harmony, it's a very difficult challenge. Hashem created one of the tools that bond called infatuation. It's a gift. Some couples have a lot of it, some couples have a little of it, but there's that sense of, wow, I'm easygoing, I'm going to accept her as she is, I don't have to change her, everything about her is perfect, and that sense of infatuation is a gift that lasts a certain amount of time. But it's 6 months, it's a year, and then it wears off. It's kind of like the sulfur on a kitchen match. You know, when you strike the match, the sulfur lights up, but then the wood has to catch. Infatuation is a gift. Infatuation is instinctive. Infatuation is natural. It just happens, but infatuation has a shelf life. 6 months, maybe a year, but then it's the job of the couple to work on the real bond, the love, the connection. And many, many smart people make the second really dumb mistake. They mistake infatuation for true love. Infatuation is instinctive. Love isn't. Infatuation comes naturally. Love takes a lot of work. Infatuation just happens, but love takes a tremendous amount of effort and real work. And if you mistake infatuation for love, you're going to wake up maybe 6 months, maybe a year after the wedding, and you're going to say the words, oh my goodness, I made the biggest mistake in my life. I married the wrong one. That's not true. It's not that you married the wrong one. It's that the infatuation wore off, and suddenly you see this person for a real human being, just like you and me, and suddenly they have flaws that are real. And that's where the bond of love comes in. That's where the real work comes in. And that's where the dedication and really working on the connection comes in. Because if you stop at infatuation and wait for that drug to wear off, in a very short time, things change. And before you know it, you wake up and you say, I made the biggest mistake of my life. And if you don't then work on the bond of love, it might be the biggest mistake. But again, this is the second of the 10 really dumb mistakes, mistaking infatuation for true love. And by the way, if we have people here who are shadchanim, or people who are here or are going out, I'd like to share with you a very, very important reason why you must know this distinction between infatuation and love. Many a young woman, many a young man will say to me, how could I get engaged? He's great. I enjoy his company. I enjoy spending time with him. He's everything I'm looking for, but I just don't feel it. I'll ask her, do you enjoy being with it? Yeah. Do you speak? Yeah. And there's time to fly. Yeah, but I'm not infatuated. I don't have those butterflies. I don't have that sense of wow. I'd like to share with you, I've dealt with many, many couples who are infatuated. They get married and then things are And I've dealt with many, many couples that are okay. It's good. I enjoy a company. I like being, but they weren't infatuated. And they work on the bond, the connection, and have a beautiful, vibrant marriage. The mistake that many people make is they assume that love in the marriage is infatuation grown up. It's like the infatuation becomes concretized into real love. I'd like to share with you, the two have nothing one to do with the other. Infatuation is a state that's unnatural. There's a capsule that goes off in his chest. He feels something that's unnatural. He feels that it's going to last forever, but it doesn't. That's not the love in the marriage. The love in the marriage takes real work. love in the marriage takes a tremendous amount of dedication, and love in the marriage is not something that comes natural at all. And many, many times I've seen couples who are wildly infatuated and they get married, and before you know it, the infatuation wore off and they're not very happy at all. And again, the opposite is true. I've seen many couples who are just, they enjoy each other's company. It seems to go well, but they're not infatuated. They work on the bond, they work on the connection, and they have a beautiful, vibrant marriage. So please don't make this mistake. Infatuation is infatuation. Love is love. The two are not the same. And the love in the marriage is the glue. It requires constant work. It requires constant focus on. Okay, well, let's move on. We got 2 of the 10 really dumb mistakes. Let's see if we get a couple more in. And I see somebody saying Tehillim. That's very good. I hope you're saying Tehillim for me. But if not, I'm going to pin it away because it's distracting me. But okay. Anyway, I have ADD. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to share with you 2 scenes. And I want to ask you what the difference between these 2 scenes are. Ready? Here we go. A young woman's walking over here. A young man's walking next to him. As they're walking, suddenly he trips. And she says, Oy vey, are you all right? Are you okay? That's scene 1. All right. Scene 2, same young couple walking down the street. Suddenly he trips and she says, Klotz, what's wrong with you? What's the difference between scene 1 and scene 2? So I'd like to share with you that scene 1 is when they're chassan and kala, and scene 2 is when they're married already for 3 years. And this is the third of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make. They stop working on the respect in the marriage. Love is the essence. Love is the glue of the marriage. But you see, I could love you, but if I don't treat you with respect, it's going to be very difficult for you to love me back. And this is something that requires real focus and real attention. And by the way, let's go back to John Gutman for a minute, because in his lab, he does another interesting experiment. He looks to see how couples deal with each other versus the way they treat utter strangers. And here's what he'll do. He'll take a couple and he has them discuss the various things. And then he'll ask the husband to step out, and he'll bring a strange man in and ask the wife to talk to the stranger. Then he'll bring the husband back in and ask the wife to leave. He'll bring a woman in who the husband never met. Basically, he's analyzing how couples speak to each other versus the way they speak to other strangers. And here's what he finds. Whether a couple is newly married or married for decades, invariably, we are more polite to utter strangers than we are to our own spouse. Even worse, if we argue, we'll tend to argue far less with a total stranger than we will with our own spouse. And if we do argue with a stranger, we'll be far more polite and far more ready to accept their position than we would with our own spouse. And this is, again, the third of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make. You have to work on the love in the marriage. It means the courting, the going out, the continuing work on the relationship. But the second, after you're working on the love, you also have to work on the respect. But respect means the way you speak, the way you act, the way you speak to each other. And that means it requires real focus. Now, it's true, we get comfortable, we get familiar, and that's okay. But if you're getting familiar and you're getting comfortable, and the pleases and the thank yous and the normal civility are gone, before you know it, your marriage is going to disintegrate. And by the way, I'm a big fan of breaking the iPhone. I'm a big fan of breaking any smartphone. But I'd like to share with you, there's one app on the phone that I highly recommend you use, and that's the tape recorder. Sometime when you're having a conversation with your spouse, maybe it's over dinner, or maybe it's whatever it may be, put on the recorder and afterwards listen. And listen to the way you speak to each other. Moshe, that's the dumbest, crazy thing I've ever heard. See, that's absurd. That's dumb. What are you thinking? What's going on? If you listen to the way couples speak to each other, do they like each other? They love each other. But you see, it may be natural and it may be familiar, but if you're not going to work on the respect in the marriage in a very short time, things disintegrate. By the way, on a regular basis, I've seen this. I'll share with you something that I have regularly that happens. I get a call from a woman, and it sounds something like this. Rabbi Shafier, thank you for taking the call. How can I help you? Well, it's my husband. Well, what's the problem? Well, he's a good guy. He learns. He takes care of the kids. He has a good job. He's responsible. I say, well, so far it sounds pretty good. What's the problem? The problem is, I don't love him. I don't love him. I'll say to her, okay, how long you married? 10 years. How many kids? 5 kids. So what do you say? What do you say to a woman who's married for 10 years, 5 kids, and she says she doesn't love her husband. So I'll say to you what I say to these women typically when I get the call. And I say to her as follows. I'll say, madam, tell me, last month, how many times did you and your husband go out? But go out doesn't mean to a simcha, to a wedding, to your in-laws. How many times last month did you and your husband go out to bond, to connect, to spend time together? And the answer is, we didn't. Okay. And the month before that, how many times did you go out? We didn't. The month before that, how many times did you go? We didn't. The month before that, by about 8 or 9, I stop and I say, don't you understand? If you're not going to spend time together, you're not going to connect, you're not going to bond, you're going to be like 2 ships in the night. The essence of a successful marriage is the love. But that requires work, and that requires work on it, and that requires focus. Now, we don't have a lot of gentlemen on this call. This is more of a women's group, but I'll share this one with you gentlemen here. It is the husband's responsibility to romance his wife. It's the husband's job to romance his wife. The husband's responsible for the love notes, the gifts, the going out, all the things that a couple in love is supposed to be doing, but it's the husband's responsibility. And I have one more radical statement to say, and I get the pushback when I say the statement, but I'm going to say it anyway. Everyone's on mute, so I'm comfortable saying this. A couple should be going out once a week. Once a week, not once a month, not once every 6 months, not once a Yovel, not once a Shemitah, once a week. Now, I know the pushback I get when I say that, Rabbi, you crazy? Once a week? Who has time? And who could afford it? I mean, the babysitter and going, who could afford it? And because I hear this pushback so often, I share with people my pushback to their pushback. It is true. Going out is very expensive. It is true. Going out is very time consuming. But if you do the math, you'll find it's really not that bad. For instance, what does it cost for a divorce attorney and the alimony? Oh, and by the way, when you talk about time management, what about 2 homes with separating the kids with different nights, Tuesday by you, Wednesday by me, weekends by me? You'll find the best investment in your happiness and best investment, obviously, in your marriage is to spend time together. It's cheaper, much more time efficient than the alternative. I'm not telling you if you're not going out regularly, you're going to get a divorce, but I am telling you if you're not working on the bond, the connection, in a very short time, you're going to be distant. And again, this is the essence of a successful marriage. And number 1, working on the bond, the connection, and that is the first of the 10 really dumb mistakes, not working on the love in the marriage. And number 2, the second mistake is mistaking infatuation for love. Infatuation just happens. It's instant. We just looked in each other's eyes and we felt the sense of, wow. But that's not the love in the marriage. And love in the marriage comes from the commitment, the bond, the working, the learning to give, the learning to care. And a big part of that is the romance in the marriage, which is the husband's responsibility. And the third of the 10 really dumb mistakes is not working on the respect in the marriage. And respect means the way you speak to each other, the way you act towards each other. And if you find yourself far more polite, far nicer, and far sweeter to strangers than you are to your own spouse, it's time to carefully look at the way you conduct yourself. And these are the first of the 3 of the 10 really dumb mistakes. But let's move on for a minute. Elizabeth Newton earned a PhD from Stanford University for an ingenious experiment. She asked people to play roles. And one person was to be the tapper, and the other was to be the listener. She took a list of maybe 50 well-known songs, Happy Birthday, Star Spangled Banner, and she asked one person to tap out the beat. Tapper was to tap out the beat of the song, and the listener's job was to guess what the song was. In any case, she asked hundreds and hundreds of volunteers to tap out the song and the listeners to guess the song. Here's what she found. Only 2.5% of the listeners ever guessed the song right. And I guess you can imagine why. If I tap out a song, it's hard to tell whether that's Happy Birthday or Star Spangled Banner. It's not so easy to identify the tune based on the beat alone. Okay, that wasn't the unusual part. She asked the tappers, the ones who were tapping the beat, to guess what are the odds that the listener will correctly guess the song. At least 50%. Person after person who would tap out the song would say at least 50-50 the listener's going to get it right. And more than that, she would show the videotapes. The tapper would tap out the song and listener wouldn't get it, and the tapper would be incredulous. How could you not get it? But would you like to understand what she earned a PhD for? It was a thesis behind it. You see, when you tap out the beat of a song, you can't help but play it in your mind. And when you play it in your mind, it's so obvious, it's so clear. How could you not get it? How could you not understand it? And this is the fourth of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make, assuming that because I understand something in my mind, you understand it. Assuming that because I experience something one way, you experience it the same way. Assuming that my experience defines reality is the fourth of the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make. And I'd like to share with you two examples of this. One's a very small example, but the other one is a lot bigger. Here we go. Again, Baruch Hashem, my wife and I were married 36 years. I love my wife. She loves me. Well, she's not here to debate that. Okay, here's the point. Shabbos morning, I typically get up very early to learn. House is quiet. I've been doing this for many years now. And later in the morning, I'll bring my wife a coffee in bed. To this day, I'm amazed by my habit. As I'm preparing the coffee for my wife, I reach into the refrigerator to get the creamer and have to stop. I want to give my wife the best coffee, so I want to give her a creamer, at least 4% full fat milk, right? The problem is my wife likes her coffee with skim milk. And I have to stop myself. I can't put in the creamer, even though I know it tastes so much better. But you understand why? Because I want my wife to have a good cup of coffee. And I know that full fat milk, at least, or creamer for sure, tastes so much better. But the problem is that's not the way my wife likes her coffee. And this understanding that the way I experience things is the way I experience things, but doesn't define reality, is something that's essential for all human relationships, but especially for marriage. And I'd like to share with you this fourth mistake, assuming that my experience defines reality, is something that plagues many, many marriages, if not most, if not all. And I'll share with you a lot bigger example of what I'm referring to. A young man is married for about 6 months, and he's coming home at night at 6:30. As he's about to put his key into the apartment door, he says to himself, Baruch Hashem, I married such a grounded young woman. I'm not one of these flighty dames. She's so intelligent and she's so just right there. She's so solid. He opens the door, he walks in, and he sees his wife up on the chair. What's the matter, dear? What? Over there. What? What is it? A cockroach. What? A cockroach. Walks over to the bug, crushes it, and says, you can come down now. He doesn't say anything about it, but flighty, huh? Not flighty, huh? Okay, anyway, 2 weeks later, he's at work. He doesn't take his cell phone, doesn't turn his cell phone on because he's very focused at work. And one of his colleagues brings a phone over and says, you better take the phone. It's your wife. Because what is it? David, what is it, Shir? Please come home. Why? What's the matter? Please come home. Why? What's the matter? There are two of them. There are two. Please come home. What? Please come home. I don't believe it. She wants me to stop what I'm doing, leave work to kill 2 stupid bugs. He gets up, steam coming out of his ears, gets into his car and drives home, opens the apartment door. There she is up in the chair. Where are they? There. He walks over to the bugs. I hope you're satisfied. Turns around, heads right back at the apartment door, heads right back to work. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here is the question. Who was right? Who was right? Was he right? After all, killing 2 bugs, you want me to stop what I'm doing and leave work to kill 2 stupid bugs? Was he right? Or was she right? After all, she's afraid, she's terrified. She calls her best friend, the husband, to come home to bail her out. Who was right? So you don't have to take yourself off mute to answer this question. The question, who was right, is an excellent question to ask in a court of law, maybe a divorce court. But who was right is a poor question to ask in a marriage. A far more beneficial, far more helpful question to ask would be, what was each of them experiencing? Now, I understand what he was experiencing, but what he doesn't understand is what was going on in her reality. Now, Baruch Hashem, I have 6 kids, 4 daughters and 2 sons. I don't know why it is, but all of the girls are afraid of bugs and the boys aren't. When the girls were little, if a bug came into the room, they killed their baby brother. They just had to make sure it didn't eat the bug. Okay, I don't know why it is. My girls are afraid of bugs, the boys aren't. But here's the point. And what he didn't understand was that in his reality, bugs are not scary, but that's not her reality. If you wanted to be a little bit more fair, let's sort of change the scenario a little bit. Let's imagine it wasn't her at home alone, but it was he. He was in the apartment alone, and instead of two cockroaches, let's say it was two, oh, I don't know, two German shepherds, okay? Would he be up on the chair? He'd be out the fire escape down the block because German shepherds are scary. But you see, my experience doesn't define reality. And my experience is the way I experience it. I don't experience bugs as scary. That's my experience, but that doesn't define the reality. And learning that my spouse might very well have a different reality than mine, and she might experience things differently, is one of the keys, again, to all relationships, but especially to marriage. And my friends, I believe that this plagues every single marriage, because invariably we become very intolerant, very unaccepting, and we start demonizing our spouse. Either he's too callous or she's too flighty. He's just a cool, cruel, cold, whatever. She's just a nervous wreck. And we start demonizing each other in a very short amount of time. So if you would like to be successfully married, I would like to share with you the two most important words that you'll say in your marriage. Anyone know what they are? What are the two most important words in a marriage? You take yourself off mute for this one, just for the fun of it. Anyone want to offer a choice on this one? What are the two most important words? I'm sorry?
You're right.
You're right are very good words to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good words to say. Good. What else?
Sorry.
Sorry is one word, but it's also a very good word to
How
say.
about
I'm
how about tell me more?
And tell me more. It's three words, but it's also those good words to say.
Yes,
Anyone-
dear.
Yes, dear. Yes, dear. Good words to say. It's two. How about I was wrong? Those are three, but those are the hardest words to say. I was, I know I was wrong. She knows I was wrong. I know she knows I was wrong, but I can't say them. And those are also important words, but they're not.
I love you.
I love you, three words, sorry, but it's also, I believe, not the most important words in marriage. Okay, folks, you ready? I believe the two most important words on a marriage that you could ever say are the words, that's strange. That's strange. And I'll explain to you what I mean. Every scientific discovery was preceded by an expression. People think it was, Eureka, I've discovered it. It's not true. Almost every scientific discovery throughout history was preceded by the words, that's strange. A fellow mixed chemical X and chemical Y and got Z, but expected to get A. That's strange. He digs into and discovers vulcanized rubber, or he discovers penicillin. Or again, most scientific discoveries were preceded by the words, that's strange. Next time your husband does something that's cruel, cold, and callous, say the words, that's strange. You see, when you say that's strange, you open yourself up to the scientific curiosity to discover why is it that my husband acted that way. Next time your wife acts flighty and really like a nervous wreck, say the words, that's strange, and you open yourself up to the curious perspective of why would she react that way. You see, when you say the words, that's strange, you begin to discover the inner world of your spouse, and then suddenly you could deal with them intelligently, you could deal with them with sensitivity, and you could begin to understand your spouse. But I have a big cautionary note here. Please make sure that you say the words to yourself. Don't say it to your husband, don't say it to your wife. You say to yourself, that's strange. And by the way, if you catch yourself doing it, next time your husband does something that's really mean, nasty, and just say, why is it? Isn't he normally a nice guy? Isn't he normally considerate? Isn't he a reasonable guy? Why would he do that? When you say the words, that's strange, again, you open yourself up to understand his inner world, and you realize he didn't view the situation as you did. He didn't experience it as you did. And suddenly you realize maybe what he did wasn't cruel and mean and callous. Next time your wife does something that is inexplicable, there's no explanation. When you say the words, that's strange, you suddenly begin to discover inner world. You see, the two human beings to live together in peace and harmony, the only way it can happen is if you're able to understand them. And as long as you judge them by your experience, as long as your experience defines reality, forget about it. You're never going to get there. You're never going to understand them, and you'll never reach a sense of reality. I think these are quite a number. These first four are 4 of the 10 really dumb mistakes. Number 1, working on the love in the marriage, because love is the glue. That's the essence of it. And number 2, understanding infatuation is not love. Infatuation is just a natural sense of chemicals going off. Love requires giving. Love requires friendship. Love requires touch. There are many tools that bond. In the 10 really dumb mistakes, I go through the tools that bond and how to use them, but you have to use all of them. Gentlemen, you're responsible for the romance in the marriage. You're responsible for going out, the gifts, the love notes, the temperature of the marriage. And number 3 is respect. You have to work on respect independently of anything else. You have to treat your spouse with as much respect as you do a stranger. And number 4, understanding that my experience is the way I experience things, but it doesn't define reality, is the essence of a successful marriage. And I think what the Malachim were showing us is a tremendous lesson. The reason why they said, Ayeh Sarah Ishtecha, where's Sarah your wife, was to make Avram appreciate Sarah to a greater extent. Even though, as Maral said, they had the near perfect marriage, the closest bond of husband and wife ever in the course of history, and there was more that could be added, because the essence of a successful marriage, the glue of the marriage, is a love, and they wanted to make her more beloved in his eyes, because that's a successful marriage. The reason why Hashem changed, because Hashem didn't want to mar the surface to even the slightest, not even a scratch. So Hashem said, I don't want Avram to hear the words that Sarah was critical, that's saying that he was too old. Sarah said, she is too old. And I believe what these Rashis are teaching us is, number 1, Shalom Bayis is holy. Number 2, the essence of a successful marriage is the love, but that love takes work. It takes a tremendous amount of effort. And I think when a person works on these 10 of the really dumb mistakes, when they work on the love, the commitment, when they work on the respect, when they work on the relationship, after a while, when you're able to then understand the inner world of your spouse, when you're able to understand why your spouse did what he did, why she reacted the way she did, when you're able to step back and say, that's strange, and understand the inner world of your spouse, you're able to live together in peace and harmony. And I would like to close our little segment today with a story, and I'll take questions after, by the way. We'll open the floor to questions. But I'd like to close our little segment with a story that I find very, very profound. I was a close Talmud of the Yeshiva Rabbi Leibowitz Zatzal, and the Yeshiva and Rebbetzin did not have children. And as a result, the Bnei Yeshiva, the Talmidim, were children to the Yeshiva and Rebbetzin. We were in the house all the time. And I got to see a Torah perspective on a marriage, but up close and personal. And the respect that the Yeshiva had to the Rebbetzin, the respect that the Rebbetzin had to the Yeshiva, the love, it was incredible regard. Okay. In any case, the Yeshiva was much older than the Rebbetzin. And the Yeshiva also was ill towards the end of his life. And everyone knew the inevitable. The Yeshiva was going to pass away and leave the Rebbetzin and Almona, a widow. However, that's not what happened. The Rebbetzin took ill. And very shortly thereafter, whoever could just ask you to put yourself on, Ben, put everybody on mute if they're not on mute already. Thanks. The Rebbetzin took ill, and very shortly thereafter, she passed away. And the Yeshiva got up to say a eulogy, a hesped for his wife. And he said as follows. He said, everything we did together. We built the yeshiva together. We brought up the Talmidim together. Everything we did together. Went there, strolled together. I didn't have to worry about anything. She worried about me more than I worried about me. I didn't have to worry about my health. I didn't have to worry about my food. Everything we did together. He must have said that expression 12, maybe 14 times. And then he said these words. He said, I said a eulogy. I said a hesped for my father. I said a hesped for my mother. I cannot say a hesped for my wife. Saying a hesped for my wife is like saying a hesped for myself. I can't do it. And he sat down. And with those words, he defined a Torah marriage. One unit, bonded, connected, one entity. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of understanding. It takes understanding the 10 really dumb mistakes that very smart couples make and learning to avoid them. It takes work in the relationship. It takes understanding each other's inner needs. You work, you grow, you get closer and closer. And in the end, you reach that pinnacle. And that's the Torah goal. And hopefully, that's what Hashem wants for you. Hopefully that's something you'll achieve. And now I'd like to open the floor to questions, thoughts, observations, and it could be on this subject or any other, but please go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was like amazing. Amazing. We learned so much.
Did I accomplish the goal?
Yes, indeed. More surpassed our goal. It was of interest to singles, marrieds, and matchmakers. It was incredible.
Good.
Okay, does anybody want to come off mute and either thank the rabbi, share what you learned, or ask a question?
Hi, I have a question. First,
Yeah.
I would like to thank you, Rabbi. This is an amazing share, and Laurie as well for putting it all together. So my question goes like this. How does saying to myself, "That's strange," help the situation if I'm saying it to me?
Right. Okay, so when you say how does it help the situation, you mean how does it change him? It won't. It's not going to change him. And that's exactly the point. That's not your goal, not your job. Your job is to embrace your husband as he is. Your job is to change yourself, embrace your husband as he is. We got more of the 10 really dumb mistakes. Number 5 is don't change your spouse. But if you mean how will it change him, it won't. But you see, when you say the words "that's strange," you begin to open yourself up to understand his inner working. Why would he act that way? Why would he do this? Why is it? And I cannot tell you, you see, we all try. We desperately need to change our spouse. We need to make them different, we need to make them better. And again, the fifth, it's actually the 6th of the 10 really dumb mistakes is trying to change your spouse. So if you mean how could you change him by doing this, it won't change him. But what it does is it lets you understand him, accept him, and then you could be a loving spouse instead of trying to be the mentor, the police lady, the teacher, the rebbe, whatever, and you could be a good, loving spouse.
That takes a lot of work on oneself, I know.
Yep.
So,
Sure
but
does.
that makes sense. It
But
does.
you know why it takes a lot of
Thank
work?
you.
Could I just
What?
say, if I could just say one thing? Would you like to know the best exercise for a successful marriage? But you got to be
Sure.
brave. Are you brave? You don't have a,
Sometimes people tell me I am.
okay, you sound like a mature woman, so I could say this.
You, I appreciate that.
If you would like to really work on your marriage and yourself, I have one Musar exercise that is probably one of the most fundamental, but it takes a lot of courage. Here we go. You ready? I want you to
Yep.
walk to a mirror, look at the mirror when no one's around, and say these words. I am a difficult person to live with. I am a difficult person to live with. I am a difficult person to live with. Now, let me explain. I don't mean you're obnoxious. I don't mean your personality flawed. I mean to say we're all human beings. We all have things, idiosyncrasies, quirks. By the way, we were put on this planet imperfect, given the role to perfect ourselves. Let's hope you're still imperfect, because if you're perfect, your job is done, and it says on the Shalom, it's time to leave this earth. Let's hope you still have things to work on. And when you recognize that I am an imperfect person, you recognize I'm difficult to live with. I'm either too on time or too late, too sloppy or too neat, too this or too that. We all got our stuff. But you see, the reason why I need to change my spouse is because it's so easy and so convenient to place the blame the other way. If you look in the mirror and recognize I got stuff to work on, I got to work on my stuff, and that's my role in life, that's my job. If you turn that focus inward and you actually accomplish something, you might actually do some real changing, and you don't wreck the relationship. It's a trying to change your spouse, which is a whole lot easier, a whole lot more convenient, and something we do by default that never changes the spouse, but does wreck the relationship. So the single exercise you do this, you just say to yourself, I'm not so easy to, in fact, I'm difficult to live with, and suddenly you become a much better spouse. So try that one. Tell me how it works for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question, Rabbi.
Yes.
Why do you put
Even
the
after you answered that question so strong, you're still gonna have it brave. Okay. Okay.
why do you put the onus of the man writing the love notes and making the effort? Why shouldn't the woman take just as much giving to write love notes and plan dates and that kind of thing?
Right. So you haven't had a chance to read the book, have you?
I have read it, but it was a while ago.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I highly recommend this book. 10 really dumb mistakes very smart couples make. You'll understand the answer to that question fundamentally by reading this book. Now, if you tell me you can't read, which I understand, if you're anyone under 30 doesn't read, they're illiterate. If you're over 30, you can buy the book. If you're under 30, you don't read, so I solved that problem as well. If you're illiterate because you're under 30, you get the video book. What's the video book? Video book is I took the essence of the 10 really dumb mistakes. I recorded 50 short videos. I animated, I put the music behind it. And that's what this is. You open it up and it's a video book. It plays the video. It's, look at it. I don't know if you can hear this.
Wow.
Oh, the mic. Isn't that cool?
Very cool. Very cool. I've never seen that.
Okay, anyway, so you go to shmuz.com, THESHMUZ.com, and you order the video book. If you could actually read, you could also go to shmuz.com and you get the regular book, and you'll understand why it's the husband's role to romance his wife. And the women, the relationship comes much more naturally too. They crave it much more. They want it much more. I don't want to give away the secret, but you'll read the book, you'll understand. Okay, next question, please.
We have a question from Ben. Ben, do you want to come off of mute or do you want me to read it?
I can say my question.
Ben,
I'm curious.
Am I wrong?
Ben is under 30, but he reads books, Rabbi.
Yeah, I've read your book. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I enjoyed your talk. Yeah, I suppose I was wondering how you feel these mistakes for marriage relate to mistakes in dating. And so, like, for instance, talking about respect in marriage, and what kind, if you're going for some kind of different kind of respect in dating, like, what is the comparison?
Okay, it's a fine question. Usually, usually in the relationship, let's put it this way: when you're going out, most of the problems don't surface when you're going out. The respect issues, the needing to change, usually don't surface. These things typically surface after the marriage. When you're going out, your real criteria should be to see if there's a commonality. First, you do what I call the paper test, and make sure on paper that you're lined up, you're looking to raise the same kind of family, you're looking to bring up children the same sort of way. You see, on paper, are you heading in the same direction in life? Then you take what I call the Bashar test. The Bashar test is the most instinctive, intuitive thing. You see if it just sort of works. I enjoy her company. I like being with her. I look forward to the dates. It's not rockets on the 4th of July. It's not wild infatuation. It's the sense of it just feels right. It just feels comfortable. And when you go out and you go out enough and you spend enough time and there's a sense of commonality, a sense of comfort, it just feels right. And that's the Bashar test. Those are the two things you're looking for. On paper, you're lined up. And Bashar test, is there a certain commonality? And that's what you're looking for. So really, these issues that I'm discussing now surface much more in the marriage. Very rarely do they surface in the dating world. If they do surface in dating, very often that's a sign that it's the wrong person. But either way, I highly recommend that you have someone that you ask, someone that you speak over the dates with, someone older and wiser, because knowing what are breaking points, what are red flags and aren't, isn't as simple as you might think. Did that answer the question? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Chaya, that'll be our last one probably.
Yeah.
Chaya?
Thank you so much for the wonderful talk, and thank you for the book. It's life-changing. I think it's amazing, and I've recommended it to other people. I'd like to go back to the question, the previous question. What happens if the wife is not in a good space and the husband does something and she feels a little bit more fragile than she normally does, and she can't bring herself to say that's strange? Does the Rav have any advice of how to navigate that situation?
Yes. Self-care. And make sure that you do things for yourself that are for you and for you only. It could be yoga, it could be exercise class, it could be pottery. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Women are great at being martyrs. And it sounds wonderful, but if you're martyring yourself, and as a result, you're so frazzled that you don't have the normal bandwidth, equanimity to deal with life stresses, then it's time to make sure that you take care of you. And you do have to do it. It is a full obligation upon you. You have to take care of yourself. You have to make enough time. You have to sleep enough. You have to eat right. You have to exercise. And you have to spend time doing things that you enjoy, and make sure that you're not constantly, listen, invariably there are going to be stresses in life, and there are going to be ups and downs, and we can't do away with them. But in general, there should be a sense of happiness, a sense of calm, and you should be hopefully in a good place. If not, the first thing to look at is self-care. Now, with that also comes things like, are you learning? Are you davening? Are you growing? But Are you focused on your growth and your accomplishments? And I think if you do that, you may find it easier to deal with difficult situations, especially things like difficult husbands. But you know why they're difficult? Because all of us human beings are difficult, including me. I am a difficult person to live with. I am a difficult person to live with. I'm me, not me, my husband, no, me, I. But I'm so easygoing. Yeah, because that's my temperament, my nature. I come late, so it's easy for me to be late. But for my spouse, it's very difficult. Yeah, but she's just getting uptight because I'm late. She should get used to it. No, I'm a difficult person to live with. Means we're all difficult. We all have our stuff. Idiosyncrasies, quirks, different things. It's very easy for me to blame my spouse. Very easy for me to lose my patience. I told him 10,000 times. Why doesn't he just change? For the same reason you don't change. Because we're all very, very much wired the way we're wired. We work on things, we try, but there's certain temperament, certain nature. And I'm not going to change my inner essence. She's not going to change her inner essence. And when I give up trying to change my spouse, when I focus all that energy internally, and then I work on the relationship, I become a lot happier, a lot easier to live with, and the relationship becomes a lot better. By the way, can I share with you, I have this little theory about the first 20 years of marriage. You know what my theory is? In the first 20 years of marriage, it's usually she more than he. And she spends 20 years trying to change that. Change him, change him, change him. And he doesn't change. And finally she gives up. She gives up and he says he's a stubborn ox. He's a stubborn ox. She gives up. And suddenly the relationship goes from here and gets much better. I understand why. Suddenly it's so much easier to live with. And so much suddenly more pleasant. And that is one of the great secrets of a successful marriage. When you stop trying to changing your spouse never works. It never helps. All it does is wreck the relationship. And when you give up trying to change your spouse, suddenly your spouse is a lot easier to live with. They feel loved and accepted, and they feel that they're welcomed and embraced. And when a person feels welcome, first of all, when a person feels welcomed and embraced, it's much more likely that they'll be able to change. They'll have the emotional bandwidth to change. But regardless of whether they change or not, the relationship will remain what it remains. It'll improve, it'll get better, because trying to change a spouse never changes a spouse. It just wrecks the relationship. So again, you have to make sure that you don't change your spouse. If you find you're stressed out, you're frazzled, make sure you spend time, self-care, and again, work on the relationship. Does that answer the question? We ran out of time, so, and you forgot the question, so hopefully it did.
Okay. Rabbi, thank you so much. It was amazing, just amazing. I hope maybe we can do another talk just for singles in the future. It was so incredible.
Okay,
And
again,
I would encourage everyone to get the book. Let's see. I do have it here. Okay, I can't get it with my background, but that's all right. Okay.
Where can I get the book? Ms. Young, where would I get the book if I wanted one?
What's that?
Where can I get the book?
Amazon, everywhere. All the Jewish bookstores.
The video book you get on Amazon?
Oh, I don't know about the video book.
Oh.
I have the regular book, pre-publication copy that you're
Like the regular book or the video book. If you go to the shmuz.com, THESHMUZ.com, theshmuz.com. I don't know if you can see it here, but THESHMUZ.com, and you'll see right up on top there's the video book, there's a regular book, theshmuz.com. You can also get it on Amazon, but the video book is not on Amazon. I don't think it's going to be on Amazon, but it's on theshmuz.com. I thank you very much for inviting me, and I wish you much hatzlacha. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.